Now I request Dr. Mahima Saxena to read her paper or to present her paper on a psychological examination of Vishwakarma's children, Pottery in India from Antiquity to now. Over to you, Mahima.
Thank you, Shefali ji. So namaste everyone. I'm Mahima Saxena and I'm very excited to be here. I'm really grateful to the organizers for the opportunity to share my research with all of you. I'm going to talk about a research investigation that psychologically examines pottery as an occupation. So pottery work and the experience, the work experience really, of those engaged in pottery from a holistic, unbiased perspective. Next slide, please. May I have the next slide, please? So just to give you a little bit of background into, sorry, can we just go back to slide 2? This is slide 3. Thank you. So just to give you a little bit of a background on in terms of who I am and what this project is about, I'm a psychological scientist and I specialize in work psychology. And in what I will present today, I examine the work of pottery from a psychological lens. So what do I mean when I say holistic and unbiased, as I did in the previous slide? What that means is that in the academic literature, there are multiple sociological, anthropological, labor studies, historical, and even economic analysis of pottery and similar forms of artisan work that go back to the early British era even. I'm only talking about sort of the modern kind of academic literature. But what I have tried to do here in this investigation that I'm going to present is to stay starkly away in terms of the guiding questions, the data analysis, and the result generation, at least tried to, from various preconceived micro and macro analysis of the subject, in order to let the data, to let the voice of the workers, the Prajapati community that I'm going to talk about today, the potters, really speak for themselves. And the reason for this is that analysis that tends to begin with labels and various other disciplinary leanings suffers from, in general, a Western-centric, possible colonial hangover of sorts, which is to say that an investigation or analysis or following a certain methodology that delves into native or indigenous knowledge, cultural knowledge, but it approaches it from, in a sense, a whitewashed lens, a lens that fails to fully capture or understand indigenous or local cultural knowledge without having innate or intrinsic knowledge of the phenomena at hand. So this is not to say that I don't have a disciplinary leaning. I do, but in psychological sciences, there's actually very little work done in this area. So in a sense, it presents uncharted territories to discover the psychological mechanism behind the work of pottery work, really. And what's happening here then is that researchers' preconceptions are not biasing the findings, hopefully. And so the findings that I'm going to present today come from grassroots level field data. It's a broad initiative. It comes from primary data, and I'm going to present some findings that specifically cater to the broader theme of this conference. So to get a little bit more into the research approach I took, the research approach was an abductive or inductive approach to research, and not to get too technical for those who are aware, that's great. But for those who aren't, I'll just give a very quick introduction. What happens in inductive research, which is the approach taken here, a deliberate attempt is made to steer clear of a priori theory and existing findings. Now, that is the hallmark of deductive research in the scientific method. So what you're doing in this type of approach that I'm following here, the inductive approach to doing research, you limit your over-reliance on theory. Okay, you limit your over-reliance on preconceived ideas or previous findings. So what you're doing is you're not actually testing any a priori theory or any a priori derived hypothesis. Instead, you are exploring a certain phenomena at hand without any preconceived notions. This is great because then it allows truly emergent phenomena to unravel as naturally and as close to reality as possible without the constraints of currently existing theory and research. And in general, this is sort of the guideline or the thematic nature of qualitative inductive research. This was considered particularly important for being sensitive to, and I would say preserving the findings of this investigation without any possible bias from what's already out there, mostly sociological accounts and so on. And I'm not saying those are bad or anything, but I really just wanted the data, the voice of the workers, to really speak to me and allow this emergent data to come through. So next slide, please. Thank you. Data was collected from members of the Prajapati community in Kushinagar district in Uttar Pradesh. And members of the Prajapati community, the potters and their families, also gave their data directly. In other words, I spoke with them one-on-one. These individuals worked in pottery every day. So what I mean by that is that this is not something that they were doing as a sort of a part-time fun occupation. They were kumhars. They were members of the Prajapati community. This is what they lived and breathed and did on a day-to-day, daily basis. They sat on the chalk or the potter's wheel daily. And what was really interesting, and you may know this as is true for most artisans in our country, each potter had a different speciality. Each village of the multiple villages and various districts that I sampled had a different speciality. So for example, one village or one community or one area in a district would have perhaps the speciality of making the kullar, or what you see on your screen right now. Another one would be highly specialized in making diyas, small diyas. The other one would be really specialized in making the surahi. And so the entire village or the entire community had a speciality. Within that, of course, you had further nuances. But the point I'm trying to make is that they do highly skilled work. And so the big question that I was after was, what are the inner work experiences? What are the subjective lived experiences, work experiences of potters in the Prajapati community, right? So in other words, I was asking them to reveal fully and completely what they were doing, how they're doing it, what is guiding them, what is your guiding narrative as you're going about your work? How do you accomplish your work? How do you feel when you do this work? I was also interested in understanding if they had a choice. So in other words, are they doing this because they don't have an option to work in the formal economy? And just to give you a quick background into why I was also interested in this choice issue is because in economics, at least, there's this common notion that artisans and people who do various kinds of skilled manual work, they're doing it because they can't get a job or they can't get employed in an organization, or, they can't be a part of the formal economy. And so that's why they're doing it. They really don't have a choice. So I was also interested in this phenomena of, do you have a choice? What if you were presented with an option to do something else, a better paid job, a different occupation? Would you take that up? And I asked them about, what motivated them? Why do you want to continue? Do you want to continue? What is your societal role in regards to this work? Essentially, I was trying to get at, social integration or lack of socio-psychological aspects of work. And through all this, as I said, emergent phenomena, I was able to attain the scriptural motivations of pottery. I was able to get to what was really driving this type of work. And what emerged was a core belief in the Sanatani principles, the Hindu principles, and that's what I'm going to talk about in terms of the findings. So the themes were generated through iterative processes of data collection, data analysis, until theoretical saturation was reached. And of course, I followed the protocols that are associated with cultural research of this type. So may I have the next slide, please? Can we go to the next slide? Slide number 4, please. Thank you. So what I found, as I said, the truly emergent phenomena, these Hindu beliefs that were the foundations of pottery work. So I'll go through these one by one. The first core kind of Hindu belief or principle that was driving this work and the identity was this notion that they said that we are Prajapati's Vanshaj. Okay, this idea that the Prajapati community, as they said to me, goes back directly to the lineage of Lord Brahma. And what this also means is that this occupation is as old as the origins of human beings. It goes back to the origins of humanity itself. It's one of the oldest occupations. We know that in general. But in terms of their own belief system, that further corroborated this generic understanding we do have of pottery from around the world. And so coming directly from the lineage of Lord Brahma was a very important core principle that they believed in and followed. Now, related to that is, of course, this core generational component, right? So it's an intergenerational occupation. And what I mean by that is that, the son learns from the father, who learned from his father, who learned from his father, and so on since time immemorial. And so I would really like to also quickly talk about skills here, okay? And we often tend to think of this work as unskilled, okay, or low skilled. But from a psychological and learning and training and education perspective, I can tell you that what I uncovered in this research is that the work done by Prajapatis, the pottery work, is highly skilled work with a nuanced specialization that comes through years and years of deliberate practice. So this is not work that is to be diminished as unskilled or low skilled. It is actually highly skilled work relying on both cognitive and physical labor and really a nuanced forms of cognitive practice. Next, everything that they do, every aspect of this work is dedicated to Lord Vishwakarma. So every step of their work task, could we stay on the previous slide? Could we just stay on slide 4? Thank you. So I'm on point number 2 here, dedication to Lord Vishwakarma. Everything is dedicated to Lord Vishwakarma. So every step of their work task, every episode of their work, whether it is mashing the clay or the mud, the raw mud, whether it is sitting on the potter's wheel, whether it's baking the material, whether it's storage, each step invoked Lord Vishwakarma. So they were invoking Lord Vishwakarma through prayers. There were specific prayers that they were engaging in. And these were not long, elaborate rituals, just short things that they were doing right prior to each work task. And so, for example, they would so what you see on your screen are raw products. I mean, they've just freshly come out of the oven. If you see at the back, there's a pile of pots, one on top of the other in the midst of what looks like sand. That's actually their oven. It's in the ground. And so those these are fresh pots that have just come out of the oven, freshly baked pots. So right before they put the raw products into the oven to bake, which is in the ground, and as soon as they take it out, they invoke Lord Vishwakarma. And nothing really happens without invoking Lord Vishwakarma. Once a task is completed, it is devoted, it is surrendered, or rather they arpit karte hain to Brahma Ji. So there are deep ties to Lord Vishwakarma at every step of the work of the Prajapati. Thirdly,
Mahima,
yes,
you will need to speed up a little bit because it's just the slide 3 and you've already done about 12 minutes.
Right. I only have 6 slides, Shefali ji. The last one is just a thank you.
Yeah,
slide.
but you'll have to make the points very briefly rather than just elaborating on one point for a while, because people will anyways read your paper. You have about 3 minutes to finish the entire presentation.
Oh, yikes. Okay. So I'll quickly go over this then. This work is also deeply intertwined with Hindu festivals. So in other words, there's a strong social integration in society. It's reliant on festivals, and simultaneously, when it's Diwali time or when it's time for various other festivals, they ramp up the work a lot. And so there are psychological well-being indicators such as pride, happiness, joy, deep satisfaction, commitment in this type of work that I was able to elicit from the work that they were doing. And they also said that work itself is a sense of worship for them. So the whole process of working, the creativity came from a highly advanced form of dhyana yoga that they engaged in. So in other words, they were saying that Brahmaji gives them the image in their mind, which comes to their heart, and then it comes on the potter's wheel. So their creativity and their product creation was also informed by Hindu beliefs. The concept of dharma was also very important in what they were doing. They would say that how can we leave this? Dharma follows duty, a sense of duty for society. And if we stop doing this, how are the societal milestones, life's milestones like the marriage, the annaprashna, the death rituals, how are they going to be completed? Because they believe that earthen vessels, earthen items are really important for Hindu milestones. And so there was this sense of kind of sacrifice for the larger good of society. Broadly, very quickly, they found I found high levels of psychological satisfaction, lack of burnout, and really deeply positive emotional and mental states, along with very strong, thriving personal narratives that were embedded in the occupational identity of the Prajapati. Can I have the next slide, please? May I have the next slide? Thanks. The products that they create, as we all know, are environmentally sustainable. They're eco-friendly, non-polluting, hygienic, totally biodegradable. And so for these culturally evolved occupations that are aligned with local ecology and culture, there is this really strong ecological element. I actually ended up creating this term called psychologically sustainable work for this type of work. And I'm assuming everybody will read the paper, so I'll quickly just get to the last point here. There is a lot that we can do. We're slowly moving away from these traditional arts and artisan work. I've launched a movement of my own where I implore people that I know to only buy handmade diyas instead of the electric lights and so on Diwali. And there are little things that we can all do in our day-to-day lives in order to promote their sales, which is truly and completely suffering nowadays. So last slide, please. Can I have the last slide? The next slide. Thank you. So that's my email. And hopefully you'll all read the paper. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mahima. That was a really interesting paper, and I like the way that you've done all your primary research. There is a question here for you. Let me just read it out. Did you take interviews or did you have questionnaires, preset questionnaires? Was it qualitative or quantitative? Was it a qualitative or a quantitative questionnaire?
Thank you for that
Mahima?
question. Yeah, thank you for that question. So as I said, this is a really large project that had very initially qualitative interviews, which were followed by the survey methodology. There were questionnaires that were created specific to this sample. And thereafter, I used a technique which is called the experience sampling method, which allows you to capture real-time aspects of your experience as you're going about your work task. So it's a highly psychometrically valid and reliable technique that I used that allowed me to really get moment by moment real-time data of potters' experiences as they were working. Great question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I really like the way that you've given an action plan for the future at the end of the academic paper. I wish you all the best, Mahima. It's a subject that requires greater understanding and greater research. And I hope that everybody who is interested in this work will read your paper and reach out to you for more information, clarifications, or whatever. Thank you so much.